Oh, hello. Welcome to the Friday Forum on this post Cinco de Mayo, Cinco de Seis, I believe that's what we're going to call it. I'm Karen Smythe. I am the producer of the Friday Forum, and this is our 79th show since we began the Forum series in 2020. The PRSA Silicon Valley is what we call a state of mind. Silicon Valley is a state of mind for the PRSA Silicon Valley, and we are super excited to have you on today. We'd love to hear where you are tuning in from, whether it's in the Bay Area or somewhere else in the country. We're here today to talk about all things mentorship. And while this is specific to the PRSA Silicon Valley program, I think we've got something for everyone, no matter where you are in your career. Do you want to be a mentor? Do you want to be a mentee? And really how to get the most out of your experience. So I'm going to bring up our mentorship co-chair. She joined the PR field, in 2000. She is a climate and environmental science and technology communications expert. She is the former VP of communications for a public benefit corporation called Aclima, which operates the largest mobile environmental sensor network on Earth, including all 9 counties for the Bay Area. And she's, like I said, she's the mentorship committee co-chair, and she's the membership committee lead for the PRSA Silicon Valley. And she's been on the board for nearly a decade. So we thank her so much for all of her service. So welcome, Jeannie Enton.
Thank you so much, Karen. Hi. Happy 6 de Mayo. So we are here today to talk about mentorship, and I have a little bit of an overview for you on PRSA national and local mentorship opportunities. So without further ado, I'll pull up just a little bit of a few slides, and then we'll get right into the roundtable discussion on mentorship with Mega and Jasmine. So PRSA mentoring opportunities, there are many in PRSA, starting with college and university relationships through PRSSA, the student association affiliated with PRSA. If you are a PRSA member, you can participate in mentorship through PR Pathways and also through Mentor Connect, which is operated through the College of Fellows at the national level. And you can also participate in chapter programs. So I, as Karen mentioned, am the co-chair of PRSA Silicon Valley's mentorship program. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. First, I want to sort of center us on the idea of what mentorship can be and what a mentor can serve as a role in your life. So a mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. A mentor is someone who allows you to know that no matter how dark the night, in the morning, joy will come. And a mentor is someone who allows you to see the higher part of yourself when sometimes it becomes hidden to your own view. And that's a quote from Oprah Winfrey. So at PRSA Silicon Valley, we do multi-channel mentoring. And actually our guests today, Jasmine and Mega, are certainly experts in multi-channel communications. So it's really relevant to have them here today. We do mentor matching of both pairing with people who have less experience and more experience in the field, as well as with peers. Peer mentorship is something we introduced a few years ago and is something that I've found personally valuable because I have 20 plus years experience, but I really want to continue to network and form new relationships with mentors. And we also have programming like panels and workshops like the one we're having here today. Also, our panelists have done workshops in the past on everything from interview skills to networking. And then networking, we have employer tours, we have career fairs, and we have Zoom networking in the current age. So without further ado, please let me introduce our session and our panelists today. The description of our session is listed in the event, and it's that our chapter helps students and professionals find mentors and connect with other PR professionals in many ways. Today, you're going to hear from our mentees turned mentors, Mega Jewel and Jasmine Garcia, along with myself, about how to make the most of mentorship in PRSA and beyond. So let's pull up our roundtable participants, and let me introduce first Mega Jewel. Mega Jewel is Vice President of Social at Bospar. She brings agile project management, team management, and multimedia experience and insights to elevate clients' reach in their social media, and also to elevate their creative objectives. So Mega is a former TV news reporter and anchor, entrepreneur, and multimedia communications specialist. Her bread and butter is video storytelling, and she's had more than 10 years in communications and media. She currently serves as the internship lead at Prsa Silicon Valley. Welcome, Mega.
Thank you. So excited to be here.
And also, let me introduce Odalise Jasmine Garcia Arce. Jasmine is an events project manager and of emerging talent at LinkedIn. And she's also the creator and host of Hella Latina podcast. Prior to that, she was a communication manager at Connect Services and an intern at Ogilvy. And Jasmine and I met when she was at San Jose State University as part of the Prsa chapter there, where she was a leader. And she graduated in 2018 with a Bachelor of Science in Public Relations. Jasmine's active in Prsa Silicon Valley on the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and as a leadership team member. And after dozens of interviews last year to land her dream job at LinkedIn, she hosted a workshop on interviewing with David Vosbrink, her current mentor and also co-lead of the mentorship program at Prsa Silicon Valley. So Jasmine, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So now that you've all heard my voice far too much, I want to launch into some questions in a roundtable, but also invite anyone out there in the audience to post in the comments, whether that's on LinkedIn or YouTube or any other social media channel, and we can incorporate your questions into this conversation because we want to have an interactive dialogue. So my first question and we'll start with Mega, is who was your first mentor and what impact did they have on your life?
I was thinking about this yesterday and I was like tearing up. I'm like, prepare to make sure that your eyelashes stay put. I was thinking about this because my first mentor is Lynette Romero. And I say is because she continues to be my mentor today. And she is a reporter anchor at KTLA, which is a local news television station here in Los Angeles. And I remember I had this internship with an entertainment department. Knew it wasn't necessarily for me. It was cool, but it was not for me. And it took a while for me to get connected to her. Very persistent, multiple emails, begging for like, hey, I'll run you coffee. I'll do some babysitting, whatever you need. But she's changed my life so drastically. And I thank her today because, you know, the amount of energy, love, thought that she's invested in me is what I'm hoping to pay forward.
That's beautiful. So far, your eyelashes are still in place. Jasmine, is same question for you. Who was your first mentor?
Same, Mega. I'm like, don't cry. But I think for me, I was really adamant about finding someone who I can relate to, being, you know, first gen Latina in a space in school, trying to learn the ropes, trying to learn from people. I didn't really have a lot of women examples in leadership. And I remember still to this day, Renee Siegel is a mentor of mine. And I remember going into PRSSA in school and college, and it was my sophomore year. And I remember this woman sitting down, crisscross applesauce, without her shoes on, talking to us about life, about how her journey was to being CEO. And she was dropping F-bombs. She was being so authentic. And she was a woman of color. And just looking at her, I just felt like, okay, it's possible, right? Like it's possible to be in these spaces. It's possible to run your own company. It's possible to be your authentic self and still be respected. And I think she was just a really critical person in my life who taught me how to tell my story and accept the vulnerability and connect with people on a very deeper level than just the superficial, right? And so if you know anything about me, I have my own podcast where I'm highlighting not just my story, but other folks' stories. And I feel like she really changed the game for me professionally and personally, and is still someone I adore and someone I look up to, and is still telling her story out there on an ottoman with no shoes, dropping F-bombs, and she owns it, she lives it, and is just a constant inspiration to me.
Wonderful.
I
You know,
think that's
my first
beautiful.
mentor was, go ahead, Mega.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, it's just so crazy to think about how well one person can impact your life, and them showing their authentic self gives you the opportunity to go, well, wait a minute, like, there's a lot of societal pressure, cultural pressure, or whatever the voices might be, and then you can carve out that path for yourself and help other people. I think that's a beautiful story.
Thank you, Mega.
It's so interesting because for me, being involved in mentorship as I'll call it a Gen Xer, I've learned so much from the mentees over the years, and both of you are, I think, at the mentor level too now, and transitioning to that role. But my first mentor was a professor as well, like Renee, and he was an advertising professor at my university because they didn't have any public relations curriculum, by the way, back in the 90s. So I asked him for help finding a job, and he introduced me to members of the American Advertising Federation that were doing a career fair and helped me get my resume together. And when I first started working with mentorship in PRSA Silicon Valley, maybe 7 years ago, I approached it as almost like that, as a transaction where I was tapping into my network for mentees and helping them find a job. And what I learned is that mentorship is so much more than that transaction of helping with the job hunt or the resume review. It is about making those connections. And I've learned so much from the mentorship program about how to do that and how to be authentic. And actually something, Mega, you posted recently, I think, about vulnerability. Could you talk a little bit about the impact of mentoring and mentorship in your career so far? Going beyond that initial first mentor relationship, but what role does mentorship play in your career?
I think vulnerability and being authentic is number one. I think that there's a lot of barriers, or hesitancies especially in the younger generation. At least that's how I felt. And it starts from that first person who decided to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to invest in you. And then and how that plays out in their careers and our careers is like asking for help, and even maybe giving them some guidance or understanding what is possible, if they haven't thought about it. And I think when you talked about the relationship, not just I'm the one with the most experience or whatever, but then you have this dialogue, this conversation between your mentees, and you start learning from them too, their perspectives, their journey, their experiences, and how you as a mentor can shape the guidance that you provide to others because of what you've just learned, other generational things that, gosh, I'm not even that old, I think, but there's a lot of gaps that I realize that I need to fill sometimes. I could start.
And actually, I want to put a little twist on that question for Jasmine, in that you're working at LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is a professional networking leader. Obviously, I do all of my networking, and I always tell every mentee that they need their LinkedIn profile updated. They need to connect to me. They need to look and see what connections I have, and then I'm happy to make those connections. But can you talk a little bit about the role of mentorship in PRSA Silicon Valley and getting you to where you are at LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, how much time do we have to go over this whole journey?
We have 40 more minutes.
40 more minutes. To be totally honest, speaking of vulnerability, I'll be vulnerable with all of y'all. For me, I spent 8 months before I came into LinkedIn job hunting, and someone who doesn't have a safety net, right? Someone who just kind of like decided to be a full-time entrepreneur slash job huntee. I don't know what's called that. But I remember leaving my last job just because you feel that need to pivot, that need to just keep moving forward in your career. And I remember leaving my job and not having anything lined up. And it was both and exhilarating and exciting, right? Like, okay, something good can come of it. And it was almost a very humbling moment when months started to pass by and more rejection started to come in. And for 8 months, although it was hard, I always say these numbers, it was 30 different interviews at 13 different companies. And it was very tiring and exhausting. But to your question, there's such power in leveraging LinkedIn. I cannot tell you, I think over the course of 8 months, on top of the interviews, I probably spoke to 40 plus different professionals that weren't in my network that I was meeting for the first time and just getting to know them, right? I would reach out to people on LinkedIn for coffee chats. Not everyone said yes, but the ones who did had such an impact in the direction of my career because again, I think I lean on being first gen a lot because it's almost like you don't know what you don't know. And I think I lean on people and their stories a lot to almost be my guardrails. And I lean on my mentors a lot to be my guardrails. And I think, Jeannie, you and I spoke at some point during those 8 months as well as David. And I just spoke to people, reached out for coffee chats, informational interviews, just wanted to connect and learn what I didn't know, right? And so on top of those interviews, which by the way, every single one of them, all the interviews I've gotten were all through connections. So connections I made on LinkedIn. So I can't stress enough like about the power of LinkedIn. I always say I was a LinkedIn fan before it became a sexy platform it is now, right? But I just remember leveraging LinkedIn in every occasion. And if I wasn't reaching out for coffee chats, I was posting on the platform, still building my podcast, my brand. And all of a sudden, I landed this job at LinkedIn, right? I landed an interview and before I'll tell y'all this story real quick because I think it's very interesting, the recruiting system and just like job hunting in general. But I remember applying for the role and I had reached out to a friend on LinkedIn who worked there and asked her for a referral. And she was like, "Oh my God, absolutely. We had worked together. She was a good friend of mine." And so she put in a referral. For a week, I didn't hear back. And then I remember just kind of feeling defeated. Again, it was the last interview I had. So I was like, "Ugh, where am I going to get this next job? Right? I want to land my dream job." And I felt like I had to settle a little bit. Maybe I had to just go a level down and maybe LinkedIn wasn't the right place for me right now. And I remember after a week, Michaela, my friend, she reached out and said, "Hey, any like news on the job?" I didn't hear anything from them. And she was like, "Okay, well, let me reach back out to the manager. Let me send a like longer email to really highlight your skills." She just went above and beyond and went that extra mile. And the minute she said that, I got a rejection email from LinkedIn, funny enough. And I was like, no. I felt like it was like, okay, this is another rejection. It's okay. I'll go to the next one. And I told her, I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, don't send that email out. I just got the rejection notice, like totally cool." And she's like, "Oh, I already sent it. Like, we'll see what happens." And within a few hours, the recruiter messaged me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, the manager wants to interview you." And within a week and a half, I got hired. And so I can't stress enough the power of LinkedIn and the power of just leaning into your connections and mentors. And I'm a big believer in sometimes mentors come from different places that you don't even notice, right? Like, doesn't always have to be an official, here's your mentor, you're a mentee, but sometimes can be your mentors. People with 20 plus years can be your mentors. Sometimes mentors come into your life for seasons, right? And so I think just leveraging the platform has really been a game changer in my career.
Did you say that you were first gen?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think there's some power into that because, as a first generation American myself, like I had nowhere else but like up, I guess, because there wasn't really a home to go to. And
Yeah.
I really appreciate that because I mean this was before when I started networking, it was all with like business cards, meetups, like in-person stuff. And that was like a whole lot of like, you start learning about yourself and how you deal with rejection and how you deal with the uncertainty, awkwardness, and it's okay. Like, I think the encouragement that I would love to share to folks is like, if you get a rejection letter, you either can do one of two things. One, you could totally ignore and go like, great. Or sometimes like what's worked best for me was, well, if you and I can't connect, is there a person that you recommend that I reach out to? And often people are more very like they're open to help. It's just they don't have the bandwidth or whatnot. And I love that story because I mean, where I'm at today at Bospar literally is because of the connection of PRSA Silicon Valley. There is huge power of who you know, and the perspective and the presentation that you bring out really does play a huge factor in addition to the experiences that you have. I think what you have shared is powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say one of my mentors, who's still my mentor now, he works on the Dibs team at LinkedIn, and I actually met him through my podcast. He told me when I told him I got another rejection, he just sat with me and he's like, "It sucks. I know." And I'm like, "Oh." And it felt nice. And I say this story because I feel like sometimes mentees, I think from my perspective as well, I thought my mentors would have all the answers in the world for me and would tell me exactly what I need to do to get to XYZ. And to almost feel like my mentor saw me and didn't try to fix the problem, but was just kind of like, I know, I get it. And it kind of it felt okay. And I was like, okay, thank you, because it does suck. And sometimes you just have to sit with it for a little bit. And Mega, to your point, you get right back up, and there's no other place than up, right? You keep going, you keep interviewing, you keep putting your best foot forward. And I will say the game changer for this interview with LinkedIn was I walked in there and I was my complete self. Maybe it's because 30 different interviews was exhausting. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to be me. If they love me, they love me. If they don't, they don't. But I really walked in there and I spoke from a place of passion. And the recruiter called me and said that was what stood out, was my passion for the job that no one else had. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned there, that sometimes all these doors, I know it's so corny, but all the rejections are redirections and do kind of point you into the right lane. And I will forever be thankful I went through all those interviews and had all that practice before I landed my dream job here.
Well, I just want to say, Jasmine and Mega, I never would have met you if I hadn't have been a part of PRSA Silicon Valley. And both of you are so inspiring. And I will always be proud and happy to refer you anywhere. And that's the value for me, selfishly, honestly, is connecting with people that I would have otherwise not been able to connect with. So both of you are inspirations to me. I think that I don't want to talk too much today because you have so much to share. I will just double click on the statement earlier that Jasmine, you were making about sometimes it's for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it's okay if it's just for a reason, but unexpectedly, you can also make connections for a lifetime. And I hope you two fall into at least the season or the lifetime categories for me. So with that said, I really admire your persistence, and I also want to say that don't be shy. Go ahead and ask. 9 times out of 10, if someone's not responding to you, it's probably because they are busy or they forgot. You're not irritating people. Obviously, if you're like text spamming or calling them, that might be irritating. But sending a message on LinkedIn, sending an email, it's not bothersome. And anyone who's ever reached out to me for help and then not heard back from me, to please ping me again. And I'm sorry I didn't respond, because I think that is true, that often it's just a matter of persistence. It's not that people don't want to respond. So I do want to talk a little bit about tips, specific tactical tips you want to share about getting matched with a new mentor. Because we are doing the spring 2022 mentor match right now through PRSA Silicon Valley. We'll share the link to the sign up. It only takes a minute in the chat. But what are your tips on being matched with a new mentor or mentee?
Jasmine, kick it off.
I was looking for you. I was like, hey, gestures, you want to talk? Well, first of all, I want to say it's PRSA Silicon Valley has been such a pivotal part of my early career. And Jeannie, you're my mentor forever. And I remember getting matched to you and having that first conversation at the restaurant in downtown San Jose and feeling like it was just it was easy. And I've gotten matched with mentors before where it felt like an interview almost, and it felt like I couldn't be totally 100% me, or felt like I had to be almost buttoned up interview. But I think something that you and David taught me as mentors through PRSA is that it should feel easy, right? It should feel like you can lean on this person, be your total authentic self. And so I think my first tip for a mentee is that this, go into that first meeting open-minded and learn as much as you can, ask their story, ask who they are, and don't treat it like a job interview, which I think early in my career, that's how I felt a lot of the time. And I would also say that sometimes not every mentor, again, like you said, is meant to be a lifetime mentor, and that's okay as well. The recency in lifetime is very real. And I think that for me, I've learned throughout my career so far is that sometimes mentors aren't the people you talk to every single day, every single hour of the day, right? It's the people that you can lean on when things are going really well and things, you need a little help, and the people that you want to tell, like, you got a promotion, you know what I mean? I think sometimes those mentors come in these different phases of your career and different phases of your life, and that's okay as well. For my first, like, top 3 tips would be trying to think of my tips. My top 3 tips would be, one, go in open-minded, ask questions, and, be real. Like, I think, again, don't treat it like a job interview, but really ask questions. Jeannie, I think you and I talked about everything but career when we first talked, and it was nice to connect on a deeper level, because then it makes you more comfortable to share other things in your life and your career. That's my first tip. My second is to continue to stay connected and nourish the relationship. I think sometimes in my career early on, I was so focused on the quantity. I'm like, I want all the connections, right? And then I started to realize that it's about the quality connections that you have. And those are the ones that matter, right? Those are the ones that stick out. Those are the ones that will remember you in a room full of opportunities. I think Michael Brito always says it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And I think it's really about building those quality relationships with quality people. Um, and I think 3, something that I'm still working on, is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think as someone, again, cultural, right? I was raised in a family where women held it down for everyone. They did not want to ask for any help. And so I feel like I'm still learning that skill, but not being afraid to say, hey, Jeannie, I just rewrote my summary on LinkedIn. Can you give it, a second pair of eyes? Because I'm not as confident about it. Or, hey, Jeannie, I need a referral to this company. Like, can you give me a referral? Like, just not being afraid to ask for the little things and the big things, just not being afraid to ask. And also in the same vein, not being afraid to put your mentor out there for opportunities as well. I think it's a two-way street, and always thinking of your mentor as not someone who you're leaning on, but someone who can lean on you as well.
Love that.
Those are very powerful and very applicable, Jasmine. Like for me, the way I look at mentorship, it's very similar. Like some is like a one-off conversation, long term. Some of them, decades in the works. But really, one, it's developing that relationship is number one. Whatever it is, it's you and being authentically you and not doing it for the sake of like getting a connection just because. It's like, are you interested in their lives too? The way that I see it is in my life is board of directors. Like a nonprofit has a bunch of board of directors to help make decisions on their behalf. And the way that I see it is my life is full of different components. I've got my relationships with the friends that I have, my relationships with my husband, relationships with work and money and family, whatever. So I have different mentors for different like aspects of my life. And they're not like every week, not every month. Some of them are a bit more formal, like, what does your schedule look like? Because you're super busy. Others are like, just ping me or text me whenever, like you said, Jasmine, like I got a promotion, or I got a new job, or I got this new client, whatever. Like there are different like aspects of it, and that kind of develops organically usually, but you could always set that in stone. But my number one tip is I generally have this feeling. I don't like talking too much about feelings, but whenever you walk into a room, let's say it's a conference or whatever, like, and you see someone talk and you hear what they're saying, you feel their energy. I go, wow, like that is so inspiring. And generally speaking, I went to like a random conference a few months ago. I saw someone who like spoke about something inspired me, and I literally like was walking around this hotel looking for that one person, waiting to see if he was done having a conversation, and just waited and say, hi, I'd love to introduce myself. Your talk was really inspiring, and I'd love to hear more about your perspective and your family, and what makes you like you, and why do you do what you do. Those are like my really fundamental questions. Is one, ask and be curious. Ask them questions about them, because once you have insight into what situations, what problems, what obstacles did they face, and how did they resolve them, and what were their solutions, then you start to get understanding of how that applies to you, if it does apply. So in summary, one is choose a bunch of people that make sense for your life in different aspects, not just for career or for relationships, but there are other things that you might want to think about. Like sometimes it's hobbies. I have friends, really accountability partners, for like making sure I'm on track with my diet or something. But the second piece of it is reaching out and being curious, and not be afraid of rejection. And just because you get rejected from one, that does not apply to the next person. Try to come to the table with a blank slate, and think about your past experiences, and not let that like taint that experience. It's a fresh new start. You shouldn't say, oh, this one person rejected me, then the next person's going to reject me, oh, woe is me, the world's going to collapse. And no, it's not anything like that. And then the third would be, in addition to asking questions, for your career and whatnot, ask them about them. I've come to find that some of my mentors become long-term friends, and it's because we live life together. Like what Jasmine says, like sometimes they go, yeah, it sucks, and they cry with you and they laugh with you, and those are the most memorable memories, because I've thought about death a lot lately because of the pandemic, and how humbling it's been. But I think about my life and my legacy, and how short life is. Um, and I want to be valued by the relationships that I have and cultivated, and that's what makes me feel like success in my life. And I hope that gives a little bit of insight as to others. What does success look like to you? Who would help you in that journey, and how can you give back as well?
Okay, Mega, mic drop.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, and I think there are so many things that came to my mind as you were both speaking, that you're just very inspiring and insightful and wise beyond your years. I did want to ask a little bit about your experience with PRSA and PRSSA, and why you got involved in those organizations, and how that has affected your career and your role as mentees, but also mentors. I just want to say, I hope that I'm not putting you too much on the spot, that you'll sign up to also be mentors this spring mentor match, because I know there will be a lot of people watching that want to bid for your help. But could you talk a little bit about PRSA and PRSSA as organizations and your experience with them?
Oh, I can jump in here because I preach PRSA day in and day out, and PRSA. I found out about PRSA through college, San Jose State. Go Spartans. And I remember going into PRSA, and that's where I found my first mentor, right? Renee Siegel was there. She's the one sitting on the ottoman barefoot. Has forever been a mentor, a lifelong friend. And through PRSA, I feel like I learned a lot about PR, but more so I learned a lot about almost the workforce, right? The world's people. And that's why I loved that I was a PR major, because it's a people business, and being able to learn about how to build relationships. I remember going into one of the first meetings, and I don't think it was Renee. I think it was someone else that said the number one thing PR folks need to do was learn how to build relationships. And that just stuck in my head, right? Like, okay, relationships, build relationships. And that's what I feel like I went on to do is build relationships with amazing people who, Mega, as you said, were almost just different people in my life. My board of directors, some were talking to me about how to kill an interview, right? Some were talking to me about love and relationships. Some were talking to me about entrepreneurship, building your business. Still to this day, I have different people in different parts of my life that give me different pieces of advice. And I feel like PRSA just introduced me to this idea of relationships matter, which is one of LinkedIn's core values, by the way. So I think I found the right company. Thank you, PRSA. It was really about building quality relationships. But on top of that, I think it just taught me the importance of storytelling, which are the two things that I feel like are my strengths now in my career. Is I can connect with anyone, right? Because I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, to be real, to be like, Mega, tell me about your story, right? But I'm also the type of person I have a whole podcast again dedicated to hearing first generation voices, hearing Latino professionals around the world who are making an impact in their space. And so I feel like PRCSA on a very foundational level has changed my whole entire career because it taught me two fundamental things that I still carry in my career today, even though I don't practice PR. And I will say in PRSA, being involved in the D&I space and being part of the board at some point, it just taught me how mentors can come from different places when you don't expect to come, right? David, I didn't expect him to be a mentor of mine. I looked up to him all the time. And I thought I was just kind of the coolest cat on the block. And I looked up to him so much from just the communication standpoint, and being able to be paired up with him and be his mentee. He was another critical piece of my period where I landed at. And so I can't stress enough the impact that PRSA and PRSA have had in my professional career and even just my personal life. So forever grateful, thankful, all of that.
That's awesome. Like for me, I come from the PRSA perspective, and hopefully Jeannie comes back. In terms of where I came from, I was in journalism, didn't necessarily know what to do for a while, and did a lot of pivots in a span of 7 years. Started my own company, was a director, was a spokesperson, all these different random things I thought turn into this beautiful painting that was like ever changing. And when we met, when I looked into PRSA, I'd joined a couple of chapters. Not every chapter is the same. And I was looking for people who gave a damn, really. And so when I stumbled on PRSA Silicon Valley, it wasn't just like a what you got for us. I spoke with Vanessa actually, and she's like, well, what do you want? Tell me more about you. And she's like, let's join the board. I'm like, hold on, not yet. But during that time, I evaluated PRSA, what they were about. And ultimately, the summary that I have, there's a mission statement, but the way that I see it is we're here as a community helping each other out in our career journeys, and including outside of the career too, like relationships and family and things like that, and living life together. The other prong of it is being able to invest in the next generation of communicators. We know that communication is very critical in everything that we do. And so part of the reason why I started this internship program with a couple of other board members is because what's the future going to be like? And so we do have this internship program, which ended today, interestingly enough, but we have others that we want to be able to develop, meaning, the goal is how do we help that next generation person, whether it's a student or someone in their first, job or whatever, understand goals, perspective, strategic direction, bigger picture things to help them understand tactics in the long run. So that's my engagement with PRSA. I have to say it's helped me in so many aspects of life. I mean, you could ask Jeremy, my husband, he's like, stop bragging about this group. But it's true. The people who I interact with, whether it's Jeannie or Vanessa or Jerry and Max, like they're my friends, they're no longer just like this these people in associations, but they're people that we live life together and we share those experiences together. So yes.
Yeah, and in the last couple of years, when we've all been through so much, and others so much more than we have been through, PRSA Silicon Valley really has been a touch point with the outside world. As we've been isolated, I feel like that's one other thing that was an unexpected role that PRSA played for me recently in the last couple of years. We have a few questions from the audience. One from Peyton about the different actors you need on your team beyond the mentor, like a champion, a coach, a sponsor. Can you share your insights on the specific roles these people have played in your careers and the importance of each? I think there's a lot of blurring lines between the different titles and terms, but champion and coach, sometimes those are people you even pay, like a professional coach. So maybe if you could speak a little bit about that, Jasmine. I don't know if you're familiar with those: champion, coach, sponsor, mentor. What does it all mean?
All of it. Does my therapist count? I'm a big believer in all of it, right? And again, these different mentors come, coaches, mentors, all of them come at different phases of your life. And I will forever be grateful for the amount of people in my life right now. And I think it's really important because someone like my therapist, I actually did pay a life coach as well who changed my career, Kim Mai, if you ever need a life coach. But she changed my life. And I think wellness plays such a critical role in just how you show up in the world and how you show up in your career, how you show up for your community. And so I'm really big on the wellness coach, right? Who can I go to for mental health, right? Who can I go to talk about things that is sometimes hard to unpack alone? And so I do have those wellness coaches and mentors that I do pay. And then I have fitness coaches because fitness, physical activity to me is super important. And it actually changed my life through the pandemic. I felt like folks went two different ways. My siblings chose, to eat whatever they wanted to. And I was like, this is my moment. And so I got a fitness trainer who changed my entire life and is still someone who is a critical person in my board of directors, if you will. And she keeps me accountable. She keeps me on track of my plans and all of that. And then professionally, I feel like I have mentors left and right that again are different types of mentors to me. Mentors who again have me do homework, have me have like they give me plans of what to do. And other mentors who are just almost like, talk to me, how's work? How you doing? And then that's okay, right? You learn how to talk to different people and how to go to them for different things. And then I have coaches who are champions of mine. Those are the people you probably see on my LinkedIn who are commenting, you go girl, right? Like things like that. I feel like I have a lot of champions and cheerleaders as well. And I think, Jeannie, you're right. I'm in that point in my career where someone asked me to be their mentor and I was like, me? And I think I'm starting to be that person for other people. I want to be their champion, their cheerleader, be their go-to person to just talk about life with. I'm not one to give homework, so that'll probably be the type of mentor I am. But I think having those different people on your team, it almost like we're so complex, right? We're not just people who work. We're not just people who just have a career. We're people who love, who live, who want to have fun, who want to create memories, who want to leave a legacy, who want to live life smiling and happy and want to have a fulfilling career. So I think being so aware of all these different facets of our life and who we are and having mentors, coaches, champions, cheerleaders in all those respects can make such an impact in who we are and how we again show up in the world and show up in the workplace.
Absolutely. And, I think with Mother's Day coming up, I was remiss earlier in not saying my mom was actually my first mentor. So I should have said that. But you're right. There are these blurring lines, and there's also these different roles to play throughout our lives, whether it's fitness or mental health or professional. And actually, many of my mentors were former managers, if you can believe it. I've been lucky enough to have a slew of amazing women who have been managers. And then when I left the company, stayed in my life as mentors. So I want to ask Mega a question that came in from the Facebook community, asking for advice for mentors specifically on how they can be more helpful and effective as we all grow into that role in our career as mentor. What can we do to be better?
Yeah, I want to answer that. But before you were saying a shout out to all the women, I have to shout out to the men too. Your husband, Jeannie, was my mentor. And a lot of the things that he shared with me, I actually applied to my management day to day. So just a quick, ping to Ari there. But in terms of what advice do I have for mentors to be more helpful and effective, I would say what I've learned is through experience. Like, I don't particularly like it when someone just gives me a bunch of advice. Instead, it's like, get to know that person. Why do they, operate that they, why do they do what they do? How do they think? What are their challenges? What are their family backgrounds? Cultural, socioeconomic, all of those things that play a factor, and really try to listen and meet them where they're at. Because the experiences that I have and maybe Jasmine or Eugenie have are completely different. And we have, biases that we bring into these certain conversations sometimes without even knowing. So doing my best to be able to go, all right, like, how do we eliminate and make this a clean slate? Where are you at? Where are you trying to go? And then what are some of the things that are accessible and realistic for you? And then later, as you develop that relationship, what are things that you can open up for that person once you've developed that trust and, all that stuff in between. That's one of the things that I've experienced with Raina Strosku, who is our intern at Prsa, understanding where she wants to go, what she's trying to develop in her career. And ultimately, she told me, like, this is what I want to do. But I said, you know what about doing this project instead, a totally different route? But I can guarantee you that you'll learn so much more in being able to kind of guide them based on where they're at, knowing what they're challenged with, and kind of pushing them just a touch more so that they can accomplish something that they might have not even thought about. So those are my 2 tidbits.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that I would just say, as someone who's attempted to be a mentor for years, and learn something every step of the way, my biggest tip for mentors is to understand that, and speaking of Ari, my husband, who was your mentor, he actually said to me, "Oh, you're doing a panel on mentorship. Well, that's just about getting people jobs." And then, like, a 5-minute conversation. So, and I said, no, actually, what I've learned though from the mentees is that it is so much more than that. And that even if you never help someone get a job, you haven't failed as a mentor. Like, that isn't the end goal. I've had mentors or potential mentors say to me, well, I'm not currently employed, or I'm only working part-time. How can I help a mentee? But they have 25 years of experience and a network of thousands of people. So I just want people to realize and really focus on what both of you have been talking about so much, that it's a relationship and it's a dialogue and it's an exchange of experiences and perspectives that goes both ways and is so much more than being a recruiting assistant. So with that statement, I just wanted to also talk a little bit about how, and you've already shared some of this today, but how your heritage and your culture has influenced what you look for in a mentor and in mentees. It's Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And Mega, how is your heritage and culture influenced what you bring to the table and what you look for in mentorship?
That's a big question for a little time. So to paint a picture, my family is Chinese Indonesian. I grew up in Indonesia, and we moved here during the 98 Jakarta riots. But like, if you can imagine my feet, like one in one country, the other in America, you kind of like do the split because you don't feel like you belong in either. You go home to Indonesia and you're like, you're different, you're such American, you don't belong here. And in America, I felt like, man, you didn't speak the language, you were bullied a little bit, ESL classes upon ESL classes, etc. And that made a huge influence in the way that I had, in terms of my confidence in my ability. but also the family pressures also. I think everybody has different family pressures and cultural pressures. But ultimately, there was a moment where I was like, you know what? F this. There is a moment where you just go, I'm not going to move on in my life if I continue to listen to all these different voices telling me what I can and could not do. So I had to really stand firm in knowing that I will make some people angry or disappointed or whatever, but I had to really take ownership in the fact that this is my life and this is the future that I need to create for my new family. And I'll take into consideration some of my heritage, some of the culture, but in reality, where I live now is in America, specifically in California, and I have to acclimate to that environment and to my surroundings. So that's how I perceive it. Everybody's different. Everybody's got their different challenges. I'm just really thankful to be able to overcome that, because I have some family members who hasn't, and they're still challenged with it.
And really, actually, one of the biggest requests we get from mentees is if they can be matched with someone who is first generation. That's something that they really want. So you're both hot commodities, highly sought after mentors. Jasmine, I did want to ask you, as the host of Hello Latina, and as my former mentee, although I'm not first generation and I am white, I want to know a little bit more about what you do look for in mentors, but also in mentees, because I imagine that you're interested in sort of connecting with people who share your experiences too.
Yeah, this is such a loaded question, and Mega, that feeling of being stretched between two places, we call it in Spanish "ni de aquí ni de allá," which means not from here, neither from there. And you're kind of in this weird middle ground, and you're trying to figure out, I'm not American enough for Americans, and I'm not Latina enough for my Latino family. And even what plays a role is where I grew up. I grew up in a low income Black and brown neighborhood. And, when I came back after college, first year in college, came back to hang out with my old friends, the first thing that they said is, "You talk white now." And feeling lots of feelings with that, and not really knowing what to do, and just constantly feeling like I was almost running away from where I came from, but also trying to run back to where I came from. It was this weird push and pull. And I think what I look for in a mentor isn't necessarily, are you Latina? Are you not? Are you a person of color? Are you not? I look for someone who can just see me and understand me, and not put me in a box, right, because of where I came from, but can really help me think outside the box, which I think, Jeannie, you do beautifully. And a lot of the mentors I met through PRSA or throughout my life, I mean, my first mentor, Renee, is a Japanese woman. We have nothing in common, right, with our cultures, but we have a lot in common at the same time. And so I feel like what I learned is that mentors taught me a lot more about just how to nail an interview and get a job. They taught me about life, right? They taught me about cultures. And what I was exposed to when I was younger was Black and brown culture. I wasn't exposed to all the different types of cultures that coexist within this world. And I think the more we can sit with people who don't look like us, people who don't come from the same places as us, we can learn to understand the diversity, intersectionalities of just humanity, right? And so for me, I look for mentors who can just teach. Oh, so sorry, dogs. I just look for people who can teach me something new. And when I do look for mentees, you're right, Jeannie, spot on. I do look for those first generation folks who need someone who looks like them, but someone who can also teach them something new, connect them to different people. I feel like one of the game changers in my career was meeting people who were Latino, who were peers, directors, mentors, and feeling like there's us, that we're out here too, right? There's people that look like me who dealt with a lot of the same things I deal with and are in these spaces of leadership. So I think there is an importance of finding people who almost is they're the representation you wish you had when you were younger, but there's also power and value in people who don't know your experience, don't know your story, but are curious to learn it and are curious to help you think outside the box a little bit.
I love it. Curiosity and relationships and communication are all the pillars of our community. And I really, really appreciate Jasmine and Mega, you joining us today. I want everyone who's listening to consider applying to participate in the mentorship program. The link will be in the comments. And also, if you're a college student in the Bay Area, we've extended the deadline for the Prsa Silicon Valley Multicultural and Diversity Scholarship that unfortunately wasn't available when Jasmine was at San Jose State University, but is now available. It's a $1,000 scholarship, and the deadline to apply has been extended to May 15th. So please apply. It's a quick essay or video and a little bit of a form. Look for that link in the chat as well. And also next week's Friday Forum will focus on resume building, which I am still baffled by. So please tune in for that. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. And Karen, I don't know if there's any last minute business we want to share before we wrap up.
Sure. Let's see, I think I'm backstage. Oh, I'm here. I am here. Thank you so much, Mega and Jasmine and Jeannie, for joining us today. Such valuable information. And I have put the link to the Mentor Match survey on our social channels. So please click on that and fill it out and join us. Thank you so much for today's sponsors. We have Hotwire, Manhattan Strategies, and Signalcast. So thanks so much for your support. We do have some great shows coming up later this month. We've got resume building, and then let's see, we've got a next slide there, and the latest in consumer trends for 2022. So a full panel there. That's going to be really exciting because it's not too early to start thinking about even the holidays. So when you think about PR and communications, so that's on May 20th, and that's with the PRSA of Colorado. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us on the forum. We look forward to seeing you next week, and have a great weekend. Thanks.